Every book ever written. Every scientific discovery. Every philosophy. All stored in one building. But someone set it on fire. And we still don't know who did it. The Library of Alexandria was the ancient world's greatest treasure. Ptolemy I built it around 283 BC as the ultimate collection of human knowledge. Scholars from every civilization sent copies of their works. Some scholars estimate we lost 1,000 years of scientific progress. The steam engine, the concept of atoms, even the circumference of the Earth. All discovered in Alexandria. All forgotten for over a millennium. The most disturbing part. There may be a second library. Ancient texts reference a daughter library in the Temple of Serapis. It was deliberately destroyed in 391 AD by a Christian mob who considered the scrolls pagan. Humanity's greatest collection of knowledge, erased from existence. Subscribe if history's greatest losses haunt you. A Roman emperor once tried to make his horse a political official. But the real story is way darker than the joke. This man terrorized Rome for 4 years. What followed was devastating. Caligula became emperor in 37 AD and the people loved him at first. He was the son of a beloved general. He lowered taxes. He freed political prisoners. Rome celebrated for months. Then something changed. Some historians believe a severe illness damaged his brain. He began executing people at dinner parties for amusement. He declared himself a living god and demanded temples be built in his name. Can you even imagine? Now you see why this changes everything. His horse Incitatus lived in a marble stable with an ivory manger. It wore jeweled collars and had its own servants. Caligula planned to make it a consul, the highest elected office in Rome. But historians now think the horse thing was deliberate. It wasn't madness. It was an insult. Caligula was telling the Senate, "My horse could do your job. You are that worthless to me." It worked. The Senate was so humiliated and terrified that they organized his assassination in 41 AD. His own bodyguard stabbed him 30 times in a palace corridor. A calculated madman or a genuine lunatic? We still don't know which. Subscribe if senator stories like this keep you thinking for the stories Rome tried to erase. In 1200 BC, every major civilization in the Mediterranean collapsed at the same time. The Hittites. The Mycenaeans. The Egyptians nearly fell. And nobody knows why. Historians call it the Bronze Age collapse. In less than 50 years, palace economies that had thrived for centuries simply disintegrated. Cities burned. Trade networks shattered. Writing systems were forgotten. The Hittite Empire, which had rivaled Egypt for dominance, vanished so completely that we didn't even know they existed until archaeologists found their ruins in the 1900s. Can you even imagine? This is where it gets real. Ancient texts mention mysterious invaders called the Sea Peoples. Nobody knows who they were or where they came from. Egyptian records describe massive naval battles against fleets of unknown origin. Modern theories range from climate change to earthquakes to a cascade of famines. But the most terrifying theory is systems collapse. The civilizations were so interconnected that when one fell, they all fell. Like dominoes. It took humanity over 400 years to recover. The period that followed is literally called the Dark Age of Greece. For centuries of lost technology, lost literacy, lost everything. An entire world order wiped out in a generation. Could it happen again? Subscribe if ancient collapses keep you thinking. For centuries, sailors who landed on one specific island went completely mad within days. They screamed at invisible enemies. They attacked each other. The island still exists today. And what happened next is genuinely disturbing. Poveglia Island sits in the Venice Lagoon in Italy. In the 1300s, the Venetian government used it as a plague quarantine station. Ships arriving with sick passengers were diverted there, and the passengers were never seen again. Over 160,000 plague victims were dumped on Poveglia. They were burned in mass pyres. Archaeologists estimate that 50% of the island's soil is literally made of human ash and bone. What would you have done? This is where it gets real. In 1922, Italy built a mental asylum on the island. The lead doctor reportedly performed crude lobotomies and experiments on patients. But he threw himself from the bell tower. Or was pushed. Nobody's sure. The Italian government closed the island to the public. Fishermen refuse to go near it because human bones keep getting caught in their nets. The buildings are decaying and no one is allowed to renovate them. In 2014, an Italian businessman tried to buy the island at auction. He won the bid. But he immediately backed out and refused to say why. The island remains abandoned. An island built on the ashes of 160,000 dead. Still standing. Still empty. Subscribe if the world's darkest places fascinate you. King Henry VIII consumed over 5,000 calories every single day. His final meal weighed more than most people eat in a week. But his eating was just a symptom of something far more terrifying. In his 20s, Henry was athletic, handsome, and considered one of Europe's finest jousters. He stood 6'1", towering over most men of his era. Women across Europe considered him the ideal king. Then in 1536, a jousting accident changed everything. His horse crushed his leg, causing an open wound that never healed for the rest of his life. The infection oozed constantly and had to be drained daily. Sound familiar? Here's the part nobody talks about. Unable to exercise, Henry ate compulsively. His daily menu included entire roasted swans, venison pies the size of wagon wheels, and enough ale to fill a bathtub. His waist grew to 54 inches. Modern doctors believe he also had type 2 diabetes, gout, and possibly syphilis. His legs turned black. Servants had to carry him in a specially built chair because he could no longer walk. When he died in 1547, his body was so bloated that his coffin burst open during the funeral procession. Dogs were found licking his remains off the chapel floor the next morning. From Europe's most desired king to a man whose coffin couldn't contain him. Subscribe if death stories like this keep you thinking for history's most disturbing endings. In 1872, a ship was found drifting in the Atlantic Ocean. The food was still warm. The crew was gone. All 10 of them vanished without a trace. Their fate remains unknown to this day. The truth is more chilling than you think. The Mary Celeste left New York on November 7, 1872, carrying Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife, their 2-year-old daughter, and 7 crew members. She was headed for Genoa, Italy, with 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol. A month later, the British ship Dei Gratia spotted the Mary Celeste sailing erratically near the Azores. When they boarded her, everything was in order. The cargo was intact. Personal belongings were untouched. But every person was gone. Can you even imagine? And this is exactly why it matters. The ship's clock was broken. The compass was destroyed. And the lifeboat was missing. Something made 10 people, including a mother and a toddler, abandon a perfectly seaworthy vessel in the middle of the Atlantic. Theories range from piracy to seaquakes to alcohol fumes from the cargo creating an explosion scare. But none of them explain why the crew took nothing with them. Not clothes. Not food. Not navigation equipment. No bodies were ever recovered. No wreckage from the lifeboat was found. 10 people simply ceased to exist. The salvage court investigation lasted 3 months and concluded with no explanation. A family and their crew. Gone. No trace. No explanation. Over 150 years of silence. Subscribe if unsolved maritime mysteries grip you. On August 24, 79 AD, a volcano erupted so violently that an entire city was buried under 20 feet of ash in less than a minute. The people inside never even had time to scream. The truth is more chilling than you think. Pompeii was a thriving Roman city of 20,000 people. They had restaurants, bathhouses, a 20,000-seat amphitheater. Graffiti on the walls shows they argued about politics, complained about neighbors, and fell in love. Just like us. When Vesuvius erupted, it shot a column of volcanic debris 21 miles into the sky. For 12 hours, hot ash rained down on the city. Some people fled. Many stayed, believing it would stop. Sound familiar? This is the piece that connects it all. But came the pyroclastic surge. A superheated wave of gas and rock traveling at 450 miles per hour and reaching 1,000 degrees. It hit the city and killed every remaining person instantly. Their brains literally boiled inside their skulls. When archaeologists excavated Pompeii, they found people frozen in their final moments. A mother shielding her child. A dog straining against its chain. A man reaching for his wife. Preserved in volcanic ash for 2,000 years. Vesuvius is still active. 3 million people live in its shadow today. Scientists say it will erupt again. The only question is when. An entire civilization frozen in time. Still being uncovered today. Subscribe if ancient disasters leave you speechless. When they opened King Tut's tomb in 1922, everyone involved started dying. One by one. And the pattern was too specific to be coincidence. Howard Carter himself, the man who spent the most time inside the tomb, lived until 1939. He was 64. If there was a curse, it seemed to spare the one person most responsible for disturbing the dead. Ancient mold or ancient curse. Either way, opening that tomb cost lives. Subscribe if people's stories like this keep you thinking for history's most unsettling discoveries. For over 100 years, France sent its worst criminals to an island so remote and so deadly that escape meant certain death. Only one man's story ever got out. And it reads like fiction. And what happened next is genuinely disturbing. Devil's Island sits off the coast of French Guiana in South America. From 1852 to 1953, France shipped over 80,000 prisoners there. The official mortality rate was 75%. Most died from tropical diseases, starvation, or violence within 2 years. The island was surrounded by strong currents and sharks. The jungle was full of venomous snakes, jaguars, and diseases with no cure. Guards had orders to shoot anyone who reached the water. Escape was considered mathematically impossible. Think about that for a second.